in the to inspire you and look up to, and sometimes rock and roll is fantastic to have in cricket. People want to become these kind of legends, and that's certainly what these guys were.
Now listen to the man who ensured that India reached that final moment, the safe moment. Mohammad Kaif talking about his time at the field during that tournament.
पहले लोग बोलते थे बॉस ना 19 ओवर में गेम खत्म कर दो. When you talk about NatWest Trophy, my aim was to finish the game in 49th over. I didn't want to take chance कि भाई गेम 50 ओवर तक जाए. इनफैक्ट 50 ओवर तक गेम चला गया, पर मेरी इंटेंशन नहीं थी कि मैं थोड़ा मार के खत्म कर दूं. लास्ट ओवर में डोंट नो क्या होगा, इतना प्रेशर शायद मुझे झेलना नहीं था.
Another classic example of a long-lasting cricket rivalry has been the one that India and South Africa have had. After the end of apartheid, when South Africa returned to the international cricket in the early 90s, the first team that they faced was India. Since then, the India versus South Africa rivalry has been simmering on, and one of the highest points of this came when the two teams faced off in the recent T20 World Cup final. Listen to Jonty Rhodes, the Superman of cricket, recall his memories of the time when South Africa returned to cricket and about that India tour in 1991.
There was a tour to India in September of 1991, which I actually turned down. I was studying my final 2 years. It took me to get my degree at university. It was a 3-year degree, which took 5 years. I was too busy playing hockey and cricket and forgetting to study. But Heinz Cronje, Derek Crooks, there were 5 young players who were invited to go with Clive Rice, the late Clive Rice, who captained South Africa and had missed an entire career through that apartheid isolation era. And literally the team that was due to go to Australia in 1970, I think, got cancelled because of apartheid. And he got that one tour to India of 3 ODIs. Kolkata Eden Gardens was the first game back that South Africa ever played. So I was back in South Africa preparing for my exams, watching this on television. And in those days, the stadium at Eden Gardens, I think between 80 and 100,000 people could squeeze in, depending who India was.
Labuschagne at Lords. Now, I was fortunate enough to be a coach and didn't have to pay to get in the ground, but if I did have to pay, I would have paid a lot of money to watch that contest. And so there are still rivalries out there. What I would say is the introduction of T20 franchise cricket around the world, the sharing dressing rooms with one another from different international teams, has almost made cricket a lot more close knit, and guess there isn't the boundaries that we used to.
On the field because everyone knows everyone when they're out there playing.
Pakistani legend Shahid Afridi has a similar point to make.
देखिए रमन भाई, बात यह है कि क्रिकेट हो भी ज्यादा गई, प्लेयर साल में बहुत दफा डिफरेंट लीग्स की वजह से आमना सामना बहुत हो जाता है प्लेयरों का, है लेकिन उतनी नहीं है जितनी पहले हुआ करती थी, इसलिए कि पहले कभी कभार मिलते थे, साल में 1-2 दफा मिलते थे। अब तो बहुत ज्यादा लीग्स की वजह से मुलाकातें हो जाती हैं, तो इतना ज्यादा नहीं है। बहुत कम प्लेयरों के बीच में अगर देखने को मिला है तो वो भी ऑस्ट्रेलियन, इंडियन या पाकिस्तान या इंडिया के कुछ आध बॉलर बैट्समैन के अंदर चीज नजर आई है। बाकी ऐसे बिल्कुल आप ठीक कह रहे हैं कि वो चीज नजर नहीं आ रही। वो एक तरीके से खूबसूरती भी थी क्रिकेट की, लोग एंजॉय भी करते थे उस चीज को। बाउंसर्स हो रहे हैं, शॉट्स लग रही हैं, एक दूसरे को आंखों में आंखें डाल के देखा जा रहा है। बहुत सारे पाकिस्तान इंडिया के इस तरह के मैचेस हुए हैं, ऑस्ट्रेलिया पाकिस्तान, ऑस्ट्रेलिया इंडिया के बहुत सारे मैचेस इस तरह के पास में स्पेशली टेस्ट क्रिकेट के अंदर हमें नजर आए, और जो कि खूबसूरती थी। मैं तो कहता हूँ खत्म नहीं होनी चाहिए, उसको दूसरे तरीके से बिल्कुल, जो खासतौर पर ऑस्ट्रेलियन जिस तरीके से बैड वर्ड्स यूज करते हैं, वो तरीका ठीक नहीं है, लेकिन ये है कि आंखों में आंखें और थोड़ा एग्रेशन जो है वो जरूरी है। अब उस तरीके के फास्ट बॉलर भी नहीं है रेमन भाई, अगर बात की जाए तो उतने एग्रेसिव बॉलर्स भी नजर नहीं आते कि जो 150, 160, 155 की पेस से बॉल किया करते हो, तो फिर मजा भी आता है बॉलर बैट्समैन की आंखों में देखते हुए। वो है नहीं, वो बहुत कम बॉलर्स हैं।
Next, listen to Amir Sohail, who tells me that rivalries are going to carry on. But with these leagues, the shyness and the distance between the cricketers has reduced, and now they can play their game more openly.
In my opinion, to be honest, rivalry जो है वो subside नहीं हुई. Yes, वो ये है कि shyness जो थी कि आप अरसे दराज के बाद एक दूसरे के साथ खेलते थे, तो वो शाइनेस वाला एलिमेंट था. लेकिन अब चूंकि यू आर शेयरिंग द ड्रेसिंग रूम, यू शेयरिंग द होटल्स, यू शेयरिंग द फ्लाइट्स, तो वो शाइनेस जो है वो अवेट हो गई है. अब वो शाइनेस अवेट होने की वजह से अब इवन यंगस्टर्स जो हैं वो बहुत ही ज़्यादा आपको कॉन्फिडेंट नज़र आते हैं. तो आई थिंक दैट्स अनदर एस्पेक्ट जिसको हमें अप्रिशिएट करना चाहिए. येस, there is an opinion that these leagues have somehow taken away that responsibility of a player.
The game. And when you're playing test cricket, you're playing for 6 hours a day times 5. It's a lot of cricket. There's a lot of time on the field. You have to be able to keep yourself occupied and also like amused as well. But yeah, like sledging's important. It's healthy for the game as long as you don't cross those barriers.
Gautam Gambhir, former Indian opening batter, also had to say something about this. He was famously involved in a war of words with Shahid Afridi in 2007. He points out that while he appreciates sledging because that's a human emotion, he too points out that certain boundaries should not be crossed.
I love it, and I've said it again. I've said it, all these things I've said it already, that robots are not playing cricket. There are human beings who are playing cricket, and human beings have emotions. Every time you walk onto the cricket field, irrespective of what jersey you play, what team you represent, you have all the right to go and win a game of cricket, because the only happy dressing room is a winning dressing room. So for that, sometimes you got to show your emotions, sometimes you want to sledge, unless and until it doesn't become personal. See, there is a difference between a banter and a sledging, and there's a difference between a personal sledging and a healthy sledging as well. So for me, and even if you want to sledge someone, even if you want to show your emotions, that emotion should always stay inside the field. It should never go out of that cricket field, because the moment you take those emotions and that sledging off the field, it means that you're becoming personal with someone. And in a sport, you should not get personal. All your rivalries, all your sledging, all your banter should always be there only inside the field.
As I come to the end of this episode, I wonder what the future of rivalries in cricket is going to be. Is it no longer going to be as heated and intense as before? Or is there going to be a friendly competition that grows between teams? But wait. Seeing the IPL and the rivalries in IPL, where two Indian teams led by Indian players who are partners in the national team, the likes of Mumbai Indians versus CSK or the RCB, wow, the rivalries touch a new high. I would like to leave you with a comment from Ryan Sidebottom, where he points out that rivalries will remain, and friendships and rivalries can actually coexist.
I would say it's probably a little bit more laid back in terms of the rivalry, but once you cross that white line, it's
In another episode.
From humble beginnings, it started as a game. A battle ball, a field, and players with no fame. But little did they know, cricket would soon ignite a passion that would last through day and night. 180 not out, we're going strong. 180 not out, the game goes on.